Hello and welcome back to another episode of Biblical Unlocks. This show is designed to help build your habit of reading the Bible, understanding the Bible, and applying it in your daily life, as studies routinely show that those who read their Bibles regularly have significantly lower symptoms of depression, anxiety, and anger, whilst also having higher feelings of happiness, purpose, and a sense of meaning in their lives. So, if you enjoy episodes like this, please consider following and rating the show. It's free, it helps me out a lot, and you can always change your mind later. And today we're going to be reading Leviticus chapter 11, and I have to preface this right at the beginning of the chapter. This chapter, Leviticus 11, is one of many which are commonly cited by atheists to prove that the Bible is completely ridiculous, it doesn't apply in our daily lives, and that Christians are hypocrites for not following the laws that are described in Leviticus. Now, before I even begin, I want to illustrate some principles that are necessary in order to read the Bible. And I've been reading a book, it's called How Not to Read the Bible by Dan Kimball. And this book illustrates 4 basic principles in order to read the Bible. The first one is that the Bible is a library, it is not a book. That is to say, it is a collection of 73 books. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, the Bible, right, points to Jesus. That's the important thing. The biblical narrative is setting up a story which inevitably points to the ultimate savior and creator of the world, Jesus Christ. So that's the second thing. The third thing is that you should never read a Bible verse out of its original context. So never read a Bible verse in isolation. You need to get the necessary context in order to understand the biblical narrative. And then the fourth thing is, the Bible is written for us, but not to us. We are not the intended recipient of the words that are on the page, but the wisdom that is present within these passages can be applied in our lives. That is to say, when you see laws and dietary restrictions and passages which seem strange to you, why are they not allowed to eat fish? Why are they not allowed to eat pork? Why are they not allowed to eat shrimp? Why are they not allowed to do so many different things, right? Why are there so many dietary restrictions? Why can't you cook a young goat in the milk of its mother or whatever? You have to understand the intended recipient of these laws, and you cannot take verses out of context. You need to read them in the available context, and when we do that, we'll be able to make sense of this, but more on this later. I'm going to read Leviticus chapter 11. There are 47 verses. We're going to go through all of them, and then afterwards we'll go through some deep biblical unlocks. So verse 1, the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying to them, "Speak to the Israelites, from among all the land animals, these are the creatures that you may eat. Any animal that has divided hooves and is cleft-footed and chews the cud, you may eat. But among those that chew cud or have divided hooves, you shall not eat the following: the camel, for even though it chews cud, it does not have divided hooves, it is unclean for you. The rock badger, for even though it chews the cud, it does not have divided hooves, it is unclean for you. The hare, for even though it chews the cud, it does not have divided hooves, it is unclean for you. The pig, for even though it has divided hooves and is cleft-footed, it does not chew the cud, it is unclean for you. Of their flesh you shall not eat, and their carcasses you shall not touch, they are unclean for you." Verse 9, these you may eat, of all that are in the waters, everything in the waters that has fins or scales, whether in the seas or in the streams, such you may eat. Verse 10, but anything in the seas or the streams that does not have fins and scales, of the swarming creatures in the waters, and among all the other living creatures that are in the waters, they are detestable to you, and detestable they shall remain. Of their flesh you shall not eat, and their carcasses you shall regard as detestable. Everything in the waters that does not have fins and scales is detestable to you. Verse 13, these you shall regard as detestable among the birds. They shall not be eaten, they are an abomination. The eagle, the vulture, the osprey, the buzzard, the kite of any kind, every raven of any kind, the ostrich, the nighthawk, the seagull, the hawk of any kind, the little owl, the cormorant, the great owl, the water hen, the desert owl, the carrion vulture, the stork, the heron of any kind, the hoopoe, and the bat. Verse 20, all winged insects that walk upon all fours are detestable to you. But among the winged insects that walk on all fours, you may eat those that have jointed legs above their feet, with which to leap on the ground. Of them you may eat locusts of every kind, boiled locusts of every kind, crickets of every kind, and grasshoppers of every kind. But all other winged insects that have 4 feet are detestable to you. Verse 24. By these you shall become unclean. Whoever touches the carcass of any of them shall be unclean until the evening. And whoever carries any part of the carcass of any of them shall wash his clothes and be unclean until the evening. Verse 26. Every animal that has divided hooves but is not cleft-footed or does not chew the cud is unclean for you. Everyone who touches one of them shall be unclean. All that walk on their paws among the animals that walk on all fours are unclean for you. Whoever touches the carcass of any of them shall be unclean until the evening, and the one who carries the carcass shall wash his clothes and be unclean until the evening. They are unclean for you. Verse 29. These are unclean for you among the creatures that swarm upon the earth: the weasel, the mouse, the lizards of every kind, the gecko, the land crocodile, the lizard, the sand lizard, and the chameleon. Verse 31. These are unclean for you among all that swarm. Whoever touches one of them, when they are dead, shall be unclean until the evening. And anything upon which any of them falls, when they are dead, shall be unclean, whether an article of wood or cloth or leather or sackcloth, any article that is used for any purpose. It shall be dipped in water, and it shall be unclean until the evening, and then it shall be clean. And if any of them falls into any clay vessel, all that is in it shall be unclean, and you shall break the vessel. Verse 34. Any food that could be eaten shall be unclean, if water from such vessel comes upon it. And any liquid that could be drunk shall be unclean, if it was in any such vessel. Everything on which any part of the carcass falls shall be unclean, whether an oven or stove. It shall be broken in pieces. They are unclean, and shall remain unclean for you. But a spring or a cistern holding water shall be unclean, while whatever touches the carcass in it shall be unclean. If any part of their carcass falls upon any seed set aside for sowing, it is clean. But if water is put on the seed, and any part of their carcass falls on it, it is unclean for you. Verse 39. If an animal of which you may eat dies, anyone who touches its carcass shall be unclean until the evening. Those who eat of its carcass shall wash their clothes and be unclean until the evening. And those who carry the carcass shall wash their clothes and be unclean until the evening. Verse 41. All creatures that swarm upon the earth are detestable. They shall not be eaten. Whatever moves on its belly, and whatever moves on all fours, or whatever has many feet, all the creatures that swarm upon the earth you shall not eat, for they are detestable. You shall not make yourselves detestable with any creature that swarms. You shall not defile yourselves with them, and so become unclean. For I am the Lord your God. Sanctify yourselves, therefore, and be holy, for I am holy. You shall not defile yourselves with any swarming creature that moves on the earth. For I am the Lord who brought you up out of the land of Egypt, to be your God. You shall be holy, for I am holy. This is the law pertaining to the land animal and bird, and every living creature that moves through the waters, and every creature that swarms upon the earth, to make a distinction between the unclean and the clean, and between the living creature that may be eaten and the living creature that may not be eaten. Alright, time for some deep biblical unlocks now. Again, I wanted to reiterate that a lot of these laws no longer apply to us in our current context, and the reason why is because these laws were made for the ancient Israelites. Now, if they're made for the ancient Israelites, they're for a particular purpose at a particular time, for a particular people, for a particular reason. What is that reason? Well, if we were to look at this in our contemporary society 3,500 years after these laws were written, obviously it seems very odd. So in Leviticus chapter 11 verse 10, we're not allowed to eat shrimp or lobster. In Leviticus chapter 11, we're not allowed to eat pork. Okay, so what are we meant to do with all of these verses? The way we can understand these is by understanding one principle. That is God's holiness. What does it mean to be holy? The Hebrew word actually implies to be set apart, to be distinct from the neighboring and surrounding cultures. And why is it important? Because we saw that in Leviticus, and even in like in the ancient Near East. The Bible verses that are talking about not eating shellfish, such as in Leviticus chapter 9 to 11, that includes not eating shrimp. This command is in the Bible because there are laws and restrictions that God gave to the Israelites to prohibit them from engaging in the activities that were present in the nearby pagan and polytheistic religions. So one possible reason, and this is actually explained in the book by Dan Kimball I was talking about before, is that the foods being restricted is for a general health reason. So God may have been protecting his people from, and this is a quote, from potential sickness and harm. As we know today, shrimp are filter feeders and prone to containing live bacteria if eaten uncooked. The same is true for pork and several other meats. If you don't cook them well, you can get pretty sick. So that is one possibility. However, Dan Kimball goes on to say, the restrictions were more than just a healthy living. Most scholars agree that God gave the dietary laws to reinforce the same concept we discussed before, keeping the people distinct and separate from other people. One of the most practical ways to make this distinction is by making their diet, the food that they could and could not eat, making them distinct. The reason is the same. God wants his people to remain loyal to him, the one true God. Every time we read about God giving a strange instruction about refraining from something, a command that sounds bizarre to us today, we need to remember that it wouldn't have sounded bizarre to the people at the time. The restrictions were common ways of identifying your ethnicity and religious affiliation. The restrictions may not make sense to us, but they were normal for the Israelites at that time in history. Once again, God didn't want the Israelites to be like the neighboring societies, the Canaanite societies who would participate in fertility rituals where they would burn a goat in its mother's milk, right? And these laws are oddly specific, and this is something that I want you to really understand. The reason why these laws are oddly specific is because there is a reason why they were instituted. And I really love this part in the chapter 3 of this book, How Not to Read the Bible by Dan Kimball. He says, have you heard some of the strange and unusual state laws in the United States? For example, in Arizona, it is illegal for a donkey to sleep in a bathtub. In Kentucky, it is illegal to carry an ice cream in your back pocket. And in Connecticut, it is illegal for any beautician or barber to whistle, hum, or sing while working on a customer. All of these laws sound really weird, right? They sound completely absurd. But if you understand the context, for example, in Arizona, the reason why it is illegal for a donkey to sleep in a bathtub is because it was put into effect in 1924 because a rancher had a donkey that frequently slept in an abandoned bathtub on the rancher's property. And one day, the local dam broke, and the local authorities were called because the water from the reservoir washed the bathtub and the donkey into a basin, and it required a lot of work and effort and manpower to finally rescue the donkey. And to prevent such a thing from ever happening again, they passed a law that prohibited donkeys from sleeping in bathtubs. So when you hear the law initially, it seems weird, but after understanding the context, all of a sudden it makes a lot more sense. And this is what we need to do with the Bible and these laws. These laws are not for us. These laws are not directed to us, but they help us understand what it means to be holy, to be set apart from from the surrounding cultures. What we need to do is apply what we see in Leviticus, not word for word, right? We can't apply because those laws were directed to the individuals there, and they're no longer in effect. How do we know they're no longer in effect? Because Jesus came and declared all animals, all food to be clean. That was the new development in the salvation history that was in the Bible. And I can even go to this passage in Acts and in Mark and in Romans. So in Mark, we see Mark chapter 7 verse 19. Jesus says, since it enters not the heart but the stomach and goes out into the sewer, thus he declared all foods clean. Right? Because he's more concerned with the posture of your heart rather than what enters into your stomach. The Apostle Paul writes in Romans chapter 14 verse 20, do not destroy the work of God for the sake of food. All food is clean, but it is wrong for a person to eat anything that causes someone else to stumble. So to understand these verses, we need to understand that the Bible is written for us, but not to us, and that the Bible describes developments in the history of the biblical narrative. So that's it for this episode of Biblical Unlocks. This show is designed to help you keep up your habit of reading the Bible, understanding the Bible, and applying it in your daily life. I upload daily, so if you don't want to miss tomorrow's episode, feel free to rate the show and follow. Otherwise, just have a blessed day. And always remember, if you're not in your word, you're in your feelings. Godspeed.